call this meeting to order of the Operations Committee. If we could stand for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Now let's start with Mr. Smith. He didn't call me, so he may come in late. Approval of agenda.
So we approve the agenda.
2-0. No public. We do not have the September 11th minutes, so we have to skip that one. Beaufort High access options, as Mr. Anderson.
Yes, he is not here right now.
He's not here.
And Eldridge is not here.
We will have to come back to that. Transportation Department report on school start times. Is Mr. Black going to give that?
He will be here. Texting him right now. I would suggest maybe we go to Mr. Grissom's PE on safety since he's here.
Good thing I got here early.
Yeah, I'll get Mr.
That's
Black.
what we will do.
Good afternoon.
Ready for me to talk?
Ready for you to talk.
Okay, guys, this is pretty much the same thing I did back in July for you guys, just updated it. Also, I gave you guys a briefing last Tuesday at the board meeting. The only thing that's new in here is the updated CRACE training and lockdown schedule that I'm doing for every single school in the county. Everything else is just the same. I just, you know, if you have any specific questions you wanted me to address or any concerns. Also attached at the end is a no trespass letter that I give to some people sometimes.
Which is the same as the
Same,
former.
yeah, nothing's changed. The only thing that's changed on this whole report is the schedule and the fact that we meet with the local chiefs twice a year with the superintendent.
While John's reading that. Was that an on-site security audit?
One that I did, yes, sir, it was.
Okay.
Those are the same ones I've done.
Everything I have,
for
we
6
wouldn't be
years.
able to talk about.
Pardon?
Everything I have, we wouldn't be able to talk about here.
Okay. So, are we going to recommend acceptance?
Move that we accept PE 10.0 as complete.
Second, and that's a 2-0, so we will recommend to the board the accepted. Who has,
Miss, I will take 11. Miss Cartledge is at a school and unable to join us
Thank you.
today. So this is the report on FOIA requests. So this has been since January. These are all the FOIA requests that have been received by the district. Looks like from January to July. August. I see an August one there. So, just give me a second. Okay. So with that, are there any questions?
We just walk.
this is the same that's out on our website?
I believe so. I don't know the answer yet.
Wonderful.
Is this gonna be presented to the full board?
The PE,
I mean, it is a PE, so.
I mean, I think the report, just a
This would, I assume, go
Yes.
with your minutes to the full board.
It would be on the agenda. If you recommend it today, it gets put on the agenda for Tuesday,
Okay,
the whole report.
gotcha.
Is there any reason that we would ever receive a FOIA request that would not show up on this report?
Say, I do not know of one, but I don't necessarily have an answer to that.
Whoever
Jennifer is,
knows the answer to that.
Jennifer is here. Do you want me to go and get her?
So that would be a question I would ask when
Okay.
this goes before the board. I
Okay.
just want to make sure that there's no,
Well, do we want
there's
to,
no leak.
do we want to go to Mr. Andrews, why, she seeks that question, or?
So
That's what I should
Wait
have
and see
done.
what John wants to
I
do.
should have brought Jennifer to this, but maybe,
Oh, you thought this was just
I just said I would be here, I would present it.
If I could, just back on PE 10, is this last page going to be changed, updated? Because if this is accepted as is, this is, has Dr. Berg's name on it, and signed by Dr. Berg. I think
Well, this
that's-
is signed by Grissom, but yes, I see what you're saying.
Oh, I'm sorry, copy down here, you're right, Dr. Berg is referenced in there, yeah, you're right.
This is just an example letter, but yes, that does need to be updated.
Right.
How's everyone?
Which, where are you looking?
Right here, David, the very
It's
last
right at
page.
the bottom.
And
Oh,
also
okay.
in the body of the letter, it references Dr. Berg.
Yep, I see it. And that's why it's always good to have a teacher.
Thank you.
That's very true.
So you can just fix that before it goes.
Yep, we can get that fixed. And the question for 11 was, would there ever be,
Yeah, just an idle question on that. I can't make a motion on this, so.
PE 11, okay, we move that we accept PE 11 for Fort Wellington full board.
Okay, that's 2-0. We recommend acceptance. Okay. So now we can go back to future high school access options.
so, let me introduce Mr. Steve Andrews with Andrews Engineering. Maybe the best place may be for you to actually present right here. Let me slide
That's what I was thinking. How you doing?
across. Yeah, that way you can see everyone and they can ask you questions. So the reason why Mr. Andrews was invited as part of the Ladies Island corridor improvement, the county is looking to change the entrance to Beaufort High School. And so there are two versions that they have considered. So Mr. Andrews is here on behalf of the county to present to the committee, just get any feedback that you may have on your opinion of the options that they're looking at. Is that
Good introduction. There's actually 3 options now. We looked at a third since we last talked.
Mr. Campbell, can you see? You want to sit here?
No, I'm fine, I'm familiar with, I attend several of the meetings.
So it's would you have a question?
No, I'm so glad you brought the big one, because this was making me crazy.
So there are 3 options that we're looking at, and I'd like to briefly go over those 3 options and get any questions that y'all have, and then some feedback on what y'all think about the 3 options. And 2 of the 3 impact the school property that actually encroaches onto the property, so what are y'all's thoughts about that concept? So as Robert said, that with the 2017 Ladies Island Corridor Study, it was determined to signalize the intersection at Sunset Boulevard. So the existing signalized intersection for the school would go away. So we had to look at how to get the school traffic, access to the traffic signal. So I'll start in reverse, because sort of 3 is like where you're at. So option, and let me pause right there, there's really 1, 2, and 3 was somewhat arbitrary in how we numbered them, because when the traffic consultants looked at them, there's no distinction as which one's the best. They all have their shortfalls because 21's already overloaded, okay? So option number 3 is the one that would go from the school entrance now, which is the Geechee Road, through the shopping center to Sunset Boulevard. And then option number 2 would be coming down Meridian Road with a signalized intersection of Meridian Road, and then cut across the school property and come to the same location that you're at now. But both of those options have challenges for right-of-way acquisition. The first option, is they're numbered, would be to take advantage of the existing right-of-way. So you would use Yeoman's Drive, come up Geechee Road, sort of the back way from where you're at now to your current entrance. And then also improve the Meridian Yeoman's intersection, so you would have traffic that you can come off up there. So those are the 3 options. So if I'm going too fast, let me know. Yeah, and maybe, that might be easier for everybody to see, if y'all want me to just talk off of that. So maybe that'll be better. Yeah, if you can go to the next slide then. Okay, let me just stick with this, and then we can look at the blow-ups further. So this drawing, and we may not have seen it, I didn't see a sheet 2 when you scanned by it, had the right of way. So this is the same drawing that we just looked at, same overall view. The first one that we talked through, which was option 3, this is showing the right of way. So the purple area is where you're going to have to acquire right of way. So you have a large impact to that existing shopping center. So there's a significant cost to that. The second option, which was the one that you came off of Meridian Road, there's 2 residential lots that you impact along Meridian. Again, this long expanse goes across the school property. The last option that we looked at is labeled number 1. Inadvertently, it sets up a through road at the Beaufort Memorial facility, because they already have a connection to Sunset. When you signalize this intersection, that's just going to be a natural tendency to travel through there. So there would have to be some addressing of how that's going to impact that, and possibly right away. Then this is Geechee Road improvement. We would be looking at a traffic circle to make that intersection with Yeoman's, Geechee, and the school. So there's a little bit of right-of-way acquisition on those surrounding lots. And then primarily, this would be coming off the school and then a little bit off of that shopping center. But this impacts just raw land that's occupied by buffers right now from the shopping center. So option 3 has the biggest impact right-of-way rise because of going through the shopping center. The second option has minimal off-site impact, but then it can make a big impact to the school property. The option 1 doesn't have much impact in the way of right-of-way that you actually have to acquire to build the road, but you have to give some consideration what happens to Beaufort Memorial. So maybe that will be a little bit easier to see some of the detail. You can go up page 3, I think it is. What I'll do is just
Robert,
case.
on the option that uses the school property, what What are we using that property for now?
Right now, the majority of that's just woods.
It's just wood.
Yeah, it's just a wooded area.
Is that behind the baseball?
It's kind of, well, not behind the baseball. Mr. Andrews, can you bring that
Behind the
up?
pool, like,
No, behind the
Practice
more.
football field.
Practice football field, exactly. So the practice football field is two. Help you a little bit.
Here's an aerial too.
Ah, here you go, even better. So if you, I'll pass that around. So here's the school, here's the main entrance, that's the practice football field, so that's where it's from. You want to pass that?
That's it there.
Yeah, that is the, blow up of that option.
There you go. That back parking lot's behind the kitchen, and behind the VPAC. So right here is the PAX center. And so you know the road that goes around back, and that's behind the kitchen, and the kitchen service back in here. So it's that back hidden parking lot.
The final decision is going to be made by whom, based on what?
So I can answer better based on what than by whom. So we're retained by Beaufort County, and so we're working with the Beaufort County Engineering Department. So we're looking from a traffic standpoint, what's going to be the best for the community at large. So there's a traffic consultant element that's looking at flow along 21, and then the accessibility for the high school and the shopping center. There's the median things that are being impacted by this. So it'll be a traffic element. We're preparing construction cost elements. So it'll be what's it going to cost to build, and then maintain, to look at it long term. And then the third element is what's it going to cost for right-of-way acquisition. And that number we're still working on, and that's probably the bigger of the costs that we have to deal with. So we're going to present that information to y'all and get input from the school district, to the Beaufort County Engineering Department, and that will be at the county level, will be where the decision's made, because they're managing these construction projects for the road. But they'll-
I just asked because if the driving thing is cost, it doesn't really matter what we think.
Okay.
Right?
I was gonna say, well, at least two of these options recognize they have to get right away from us.
Okay.
So if you decide you don't like that option, you don't have to give, I guess that would get in that thing, but we do have some say in that, because they are talking about using our land, even though it's for our use. Is that
Right.
fair enough?
Yeah.
And only one option, I guess, if they went through the commercial property, has no impact on our property. That's just all property. The other two options all do impact our property.
And that option is why I asked the question, because I know that we wouldn't be impacted if you went through that shopping center. But I know the person paying the bills is going to be impacted heavily if they go through that shopping center, because the owner of the shopping center thinks that shopping center is worth a whole lot of money. Much more than I think it's worth. You know, I could see that if it was cost-based.
Yes. Yes, it's not going to be just purely cost.
Okay.
And then to that, we're trying to get feedback from everybody concurrently, and so we're developing the plans while we're getting input. So another school element is the state, the Office of School Facilities, and their engineering department that we have submitted to them, and they're looking at it and providing input to us. You know, we've certainly been talking with Robert and his staff from the beginning.
So we can tell you what our druthers are, but
Right.
somebody
You're
else.
responsible for the impact, traffic impact, study also?
Well, so these three options, is the traffic consultant put it, it's like between the 6 and the 6.5. So there's just it's not a very,
Not much.
not much difference in them. And actually the the one that would be the slightly better would be the one that goes through the shopping center, from, you know, just from a purely traffic standpoint. And what does that do for y'all? I don't know, it doesn't seem to drastically change how your traffic flow is, but I think y'all already have some issues that you're having to work through and parking, and so that's what we tried to start looking at, a bigger picture, and how can we help y'all, as well as the goal of the county is to improve the flow of traffic along 21.
Robert, you want to tell us about what the issues are that we're having?
Well, I would say, you know, that entrance, well, to me, the entrance to Beaufort High is not a good entrance. Now, you have to round that tree, and it's just, it's not a good entrance for a school. I mean, that's pretty much one of the main issues. I'm trying to think what else we talked about.
Parking or the utilization of the
Well,
shopping center
another
parking.
thing is any improvement, and one reason we have to go through OSF would be the ability to get around the school and the impact on a fire truck to go around. So some of these would work better than others, but that's something they're probably gonna comment on, because as of right now, there's not a designated road behind the school. I'm just guessing that's what OSF's gonna say. So those are kind of our two issues. We don't have a pronounced entrance. You know, it's kind of hidden back in the woods. You kind of go on this residential road that winds, and boom, then you're at the school. So there's not a designated, here's, everybody knows where Beaufort High is if you were new to the area.
So, on the,
Well, I was gonna say that I think it's fine with the sign pretty much is right there, and pretty much everybody pretty much knows that that's where the school's at. I mean, if you did anything, I would probably should cut down those bushes beside it, but other than that, I don't see a problem with the way people enter the school the way it is right now. I mean, because if something happened, I mean, you have good access, you can go left or you can go right. I mean, right now, they currently have more than one way if something happened, that once they get out that main block, where they can go, they can even use both lanes. So I really see no problem with the front entrance at the Beaufort High School is there now. That's my take on it.
One of the things you missed is that light's gonna go away.
Okay, and, right, well, yeah, with that light go away, then, that possibly could bring a problem, or they could do like how they do, not a lot of them go down they go through the shopping center, and they cut through different junctures, so they're moving that light there, it wouldn't stop nothing, because they already substitute that interest anyway, depending on what time of day it is, because of the business of traffic. So that light is just one cutoff, that when going out of that school, through that shopping center, they have two or three other ways that they use to get out, so that light is a factor to help traffic and to get out the main entrance, but that doesn't stop traffic with the flow of people getting in and out of Beaufort High School.
Yeah, I cut through the shopping center all the time. That's
Exactly.
the way I go.
Yeah, exactly, so, yeah, I don't know.
Well, it all seems pretty preliminary to me, but it seems to me that, at first blush, that the least disruptive to the school property and ease of access to the school is the Yeoman's Drive approach. Okay. That's the one I favor. I would like to add, though, that I would hope that as this project goes from stage to stage, is that we do not have informal discussions like this. We also get reports which synthesize what the pros and cons are, and not talk about where the trees are and things like that. I'd like to see formal reports, documented conversations as we progress from stage to stage.
right,
Have you had any feedback from the neighborhoods, like the Meridian neighborhood or the Yeoman's Drive neighborhood? Have they been involved in these discussions at all?
so this is still conceptual planning, and all the stakeholders have to have input, but we're sort of going to the people that are gonna get hit the most, so the school, and there's the technical side of y'all's needs, OSF, and the traffic, and work through that. That's why we have multiple options, and then we can go out into the community and get their input as well.
And isn't this actually annexed in by the city of Beaufort? Isn't Beaufort High in the city of Beaufort?
Yeah, it is, yes, it
So
is.
are they,
It
it is, right? It got annexed in
is.
many years ago.
It is, the
Right.
city of Beaufort Police Department serves that school.
Right, and
Yes,
it
it is.
happened back in 2000 when the
Right.
school opened, I thought,
Right,
because it's contiguous with the water. So is the city of Beaufort involved in this?
So they will have input. It is the traffic study that they did that was driving it, so giving us the information on where to go. So their concern is along the corridor, not necessarily how do we get back to our access point. So that's more what this is.
Okay.
It's just your accessibility back to the signalized intersection on 21.
Seems to me like what you're saying to us, I don't know, is that we have to figure out what the design of that campus is gonna look like before we can answer your question adequately. And because if we accept any of these, then that kind of pigeonhole what your options are, designing the entrance, et cetera, around the campus.
Now, the entrance, that would all be handled as part of this.
Okay,
So you're looking at the options, and if we had to, like this is we move the sign, that would end up being part of this.
okay, what about, I don't know, once the flow gets into the campus?
Well, one of the things, all three options actually go to the same spot in the campus where it is now. So once it makes it to that spot, everything stays the same for the most part.
And is that good or bad? That's, because you said we have problems on the campus. I mean, why don't we fix it all at the same time, even if we gotta go to a different spot? Now that we're coordinating with the people who are doing the outside structure, why don't we look at the inside structure at the same time? That's just my thought process about it.
So what are you looking for from us today? A sampling of opinions, of a formal action, a semi-formal action? What is?
One is just the courtesy to bring it to you as it's developing, to get input and hear conversations like this. Two, yes, if y'all had a preference, if there's something that you saw glaringly wrong with any of them or challenging, we would want to hear that. The positive, like the Yeoman's Drive, and that is why, to a little bit, that it was number one, is it has the least impact to right-of-way. It seems to provide y'all the most accessibility. There's other points at which you could enter the campus if you so chose. You could make some minor changes and segregate your bus traffic coming off of Yeoman's from the car traffic if you wanted to. That option existed in that Yeoman's, so that was something. So just general feedback. Once we get more of the technical stuff, and as Robert mentioned, from the OSF, your ability to get around traffic, fire ingress and egress, emergency ingress and egress while you're loading and unloading. That'll give us a little bit more guidance, and then we'll be able to come back with what you asked for, a formal recommendation. Put the 1, 2, 3, no matter how tight the ranking is, rank them, and this is the recommendation and why, and then ask for y'all's endorsement of that, or hear more input of what y'all want changed from it.
Thank you.
Good. Anybody else? Bill, anything?
No, I'm very familiar with this. I was one that started attending the meeting with me and Robert's counterpart.
Carol,
Yeah, when they first started, so I'm very familiar with it.
Yeah, I'm kind of familiar with it too. There's communities all over this.
So one question, and Robert mentioned it. So let's just look at this option. So if you went with the Meridian Road and you traveled along your northern boundary line, so we're hugged right up against the property, it's just a strip of land that is taken, it's not going through the property. It does end up coming through that parking lot and effectively takes out one complete row of the parking. And it's about 1¼ acres, just in round figures, about your land that it impacts. So how do y'all view that? What would be your first thoughts is to work with the county, and it gives you a chance to improve some of your access. You can get your sign changed, and that covers compensation, or would you want compensation for the land? Just your first gut check. What are y'all's thoughts on that?
Point of
How do you see the
clarification.
right of way?
Are you saying that coming through Meridian Road, taking out the student, that back student parking lot, is that what you're saying?
I'm not sure what it's used for.
No, it's that back kitchen parking lot, you know, behind the kitchen. There's
Okay,
that,
by those homes.
yes, right behind the back.
And you would take out that whole back parking lot?
No, you would probably lose one, like you were saying, 1 row of parking spaces. And I think right now there's 4.
Right forward.
Yeah, there's 4 rows, you lose 1 of the 4. And one of the things you have to realize with Meridian, so there is gonna be a light on Meridian.
That would be part of this, that would be part of this plan.
And
yes.
recognize that that's where Whitehall is located.
Right.
And then there's a condo project right across the street, so that road in the future will be a much busier road than it is today.
Right, and there's a whole bunch of people, that road, I believe that road is in my district, there's a whole bunch of people who would have some, so I would, before I voice anything, I'll let you know what my constituents on that road have to say. Yeah, that's, I got nothing to say.
Did you say there's going to be
Wanna
a
know
light
what they
right
say?
there where that
Look at all for
semicircle
sale
is?
signs.
See where it comes off right there on
Yeah,
Meridian?
I know
There's a
that.
light right
Yeah,
there.
but-
No, it would be
You have
at
a lot of
Meridian
people
comes
just
to
moving in there
21.
too, there.
So kids coming
Yeah,
out
so-
of there turning left would not have a light. The
Correct.
students exiting there turning left on Meridian would not have a light.
Right,
Yeah.
but what this would include is a widening the pavement on Meridian, but based on our initial look at Meridian, staying in the right of way, so it doesn't require impact to that. So this would include a left turn lane, so you could have through movement while you have your stacking for your left turn lane.
Also, whose project is it, if you don't mind me asking, who's the county trying to take this on right now?
Right, so
And I mean, the reason why I'm asking that is because Meridian has, that whole section that you're talking about, has a lot of things going on right now. And I just hope that we're not readjusting or realigning things to fit that area over there to make it more sellable. You know, I just want to be cautious of that. Because, you know, I'm not saying that that's what's going on, but I hope that's not what we're trying to participate in, because that does scare me, because when you talk about that, there's a whole lot of development and there's a lot of stuff going on in Meridian right now. Meridian is next bluff.
So there is traffic studies that have been done that triggered this from the city of Beaufort and their look at the 21 corridor. Then as part of this study that the county's doing more specific to the school's needs, there was a traffic study done. So certainly they're going to consider traffic movements and make sure that the intersections, the changes are safe. So it won't be done in a vacuum. We're going to be looking at the whole area. And there's a multitude of things. There's the pathway project is coming along that's going to include pathways along Meridian. That would be considered in this planning effort as well. So we're going to take into account as much information as we can gather and give consideration to and project out as far as we can reasonably project out.
Would the widening of Meridian create a new entrance to the Whitehall development?
So in the widening would be at this intersection, so it would provide, right now, the focus is on the school, it would provide left turn movement into the school. If this develops, then maybe it would be looking at to provide left turn movement in there, but it just would be the storage lane. So the left turn vehicle could be in the center turn lane, and you still have your east and west lanes open for traffic. The Meridian Road in all three alternatives is improved to include a right turn lane and a signal. So your right turn movement can keep moving, so your traffic off Meridian can keep getting onto 21 while the light's red, provided that there's a break in the traffic to get.
And so the only impact on, I guess you'd say, in relation to Whitehall is the drive has to be right straight across from that existing drive.
To line up with that.
And it just so happens that property is vacant right now, or is not developed.
Right.
You're good, you're good?
I'm good.
Okay, Trish, you
But
good?
if you did the Yeoman's one, if that option was that the students would have a light to turn in and out of from there, right? If you put, because there's going to be a light right there at that Yeoman's Drive, so it's
So,
already decided?
yes, so at Yeoman's, well,
Either Yeoman or Sunset.
Yeoman's and 21, this would be a signal.
Okay.
Then this would be a circle to get into the school property. And then Yeoman's and Meridian would again be only widened Meridian to allow left turn storage. So you still have your through traffic, so it wouldn't be, the people turning left wouldn't be blocking traffic.
So I guess to explain, so the Sunset or Yeoman's have to provide that alternate path.
Up to Ladies Island?
Yes.
That's right.
So one of the, that's why we're losing our light.
Got it.
Our light is too close to Sunset or Yeoman's, so one of those two has to have a light. And then the only thing I would add, I think this first time we saw that traffic circle, that we probably want, if you did go that route, to discuss, because we wouldn't want direct access possibly to that student parking lot, or we need to talk about how we control access. That's an issue right now, we gate it right now, so, and that looks a little offset off the traffic circle, so how all that works would be, need some discussion.
Exactly. Just, when we went out there and looked at it, sort of rough laid it in, it does have an awkward situation. It's already, you can see how people are cutting and driving through those first few parking stalls. So this was just a concept to show the circle, get back to the, I guess this could continue on to where the buses are coming in and out, and then this feeds in the parking. But it does want to say that that should be pushed back in better 90-degree intersection, so it would give you that point that you could gate it off if you chose. But this is again concept. That definitely does need more detailed surveying and study of the geometry of that. But the traffic circle and the purpose of showing it is it provides the best traffic flow in high use conditions as well as slower, less demand. Yes.
So our primary interest is our stake in what happens once they get off 21, correct?
Yeah.
The traffic department's gonna decide what's the best way to get off, as safest way to get them off 21. So
Right.
I'm going from an idea of when they leave 21, what's the best thing to do? What chews up the land the least, and what goes to property the least. That's why I'm in favor of
The Yeoman's.
Yeoman's Drive, but, so I'll leave it up to the traffic people to decide whether it should be a rotary or not.
Yeah, once you work out the traffic circle and your ability to control ingress and egress as you need to, then it is the least offensive when it comes to right-of-way acquisition.
And my biggest concern is just kid safety. I mean, these young drivers, you know, making left-hand turns and without a light, and, I mean, that's my biggest concern, is the safety of our young, of our students.
So all of the options would have a signal back to 21, so that there would be protected left movements.
Not Meridian though,
Well,
right? Yeah.
not from Yeoman's to Meridian, but then from Meridian to 21. So they would be in situations where they would be making a right turn from Yeoman's onto Meridian, leaving the school, and then they would be, either way they went on Yeoman's, they end up either at Yeoman's in 21 or Meridian in 21 with a signalized intersection if they had to make that left turn movement. But yes, that's a consideration, is how many young drivers that y'all have. So that's being considered. We're not the traffic consultants, but the traffic consultants are considered, and we've had those conversations. So we collectively share the concern you expressed. Young drivers.
Good. I like cutting through the shopping center because everybody does it now and has absolutely no effect on us.
Yeah, me too.
I know there's a cost prohibition now.
So to that, we thought since the physical connection was already there, that all three, or the two options that abandoned that, so the option 1 and 2, would maintain just like this, would maintain that connection for emergency's sake, and it would be a gated connection. So you could always have a key to the gate, just unlock it and keep on cutting through to your heart content. So that is something, seriously, that we thought it would be just an easy thing to keep and add a gate, so you just have one more access point for emergency.
Or they could go buy Butler and look at buy Butler property and make it interesting that way.
Butler Marine. Well, the problem is the light, though. The light has to be at either Sunset or Unions. They did look at that. We did talk about that, whether or not we could just go through that. But the problem is.
So that is a good point, so you know that we were thinking outside the box and looking at it. So one concept was to take an alternative access. Butler, or how Geechee, I guess, does, but certainly in the past when it came straight out to 21, and provide a signalized intersection there. So the challenge is that you're too close to this, so maybe you could come down and signalize Yeoman, and there would just be enough break with the signals to stop in traffic that you could move left out or left in to Sunset. But just all the ancillary traffic, all the traffic coming in from other locations was too much, that you never give that left turn movement time either to exit from 21 onto Sunset or from Sunset. So it needs a signal right there. So we did look at that and see if we could leave you as alone to the best that we could, but that it just, from a traffic standpoint, there was no way without signalizing Sunset to provide enough time for those left turn movements.
And Sunset needs to be signalized because otherwise it all backs up at Publix. Which is the situation we have today. And that's what all this is to get around.
So we don't want to rush, but we're probably overstaying our time, and it looked like y'all had a big agenda before we hopped onto it. Well, I appreciate y'all's time. Hopefully we answered some of your questions. We got information from y'all that'll be helpful to what we're doing. We appreciate the time to visit with y'all.
And you'll be back when some of these things firm up.
Yeah, we'll be back, probably more than one trip. But thank you for y'all's time.
Thank you.
Y'all have a good day.
Mr. Chairman, before we go on to the next section, I'd like to ask that everybody remember that we're trying to make a video recording of this meeting, and when we only talk loud enough for the person next to us to hear, it's not getting picked up. So we're making it more difficult for fellow board members who rely on these videos and the general public if we don't speak loud enough to be recorded on them. I know it's a pain in the neck, and I know the tendency is to speak conversationally to the person next to you, but we can't do that if we're gonna fulfill the objective.
Point made, good point. We're gonna go back now to
I have Jennifer here to answer your question, and then she's got to go.
I'm sorry.
Your
No
question.
problem.
The question was the FOIA report. Is there any way that we would get a FOIA request that would not show up on that report?
On that report, no.
There's no, okay, that shuts
Unless I
that
just
door.
made some sort of an error, it would just be an error, but I really try to
Okay.
log them when they come in. And then,
Everything
as
is
you can
logged.
see, I put various dates through the process. I try to log it in as we go forward.
Great, I just wanted to make sure there was no
Perfect. Yeah.
leak.
Everything we get is on there.
Absolutely everything we do. Okay.
Okay.
All right,
Thank you.
Thank you. Rest easy then. Okay, transportation Transportation Department report on school start times.
Are you accepting the PE?
They already
They
did.
did?
Two
Okay.
of them.
Okay,
I think
okay.
Mr. Dowling.
Okay, thank you.
It was,
Point of order. I have a question. I'm glad you're here, don't get me wrong, but did we not decide back in the spring when we started talking about start times that we would not involve transportation until we had received the input from the three clusters as to what their preference is? Then we would approach transportation and say, are these things possible? So I'm not sure. This
that's
is
not my recollection.
Will, what's your recollection?
I think that we were supposed, well, what we did give transportation we did ask transportation to come, but I think you did say that, that you wanted us to, figure out how we wanted to approach it. And you said that you wanted, on the last meeting, that you wanted us to, bring back
Our ideas.
our ideas, right?
Because transportation would not drive this talk.
Right,
Would not be the driver.
I thought we asked for the most
What-
efficient turnaround, because the 1 hour was changing, the 1 hour was driving the separation. And I thought that we said, if you reduce that, the separation will be reduced.
And you specifically asked them to come back on this date, because you asked them if they would be available to come back and have enough time to do their study, and that's what this was for.
That's true, we gave you a deadline, which you're meeting right now. Is that true?
That is correct.
Okay, I'm gonna just start, then I'm gonna go back a little bit. That, when we talked about that Yeomans, and I talked with people and everything, and Robert, you might can help me, but they did say that back street down there, it would really help for the buses if they go down that back street. The issue was they couldn't turn left to go over the bridge, but that was a good, the people that have been here for a while, they said that worked out well, but the sheriff stopped them from doing that. So for us, that would be very beneficial if we could come down here and if the light would just hold enough time where we can get out versus coming out the other way, closer to that Publix end, where, and that ties into what we're about to discuss now. We lose time on that when we go the way that they're talking about now, that Publix, when you're talking about it backs up and everything, and we still have to. But anyway, going back to this, you asked for us to come back and ask us, you know, like, what would happen if we staggered the start times. Well, what we found out, what was all involved, was that we estimated the impact on transportation, each cluster, the costs, reconciling additional competing objectives, expenses, and equity. And we looked at it from a district level as well as a cluster level, because each cluster has its own dynamic, and what works for one doesn't necessarily work for the other. So going to the next thing, I wanted the board to consider of that hour that we've got right now currently in place, if we allow 10 minutes of that to board and release at school, and we allow 10 minutes to schedule even when we put our routes into the school, the software. And in some cases with our smaller students, it takes a little bit longer. And then, again, traffic flow is a part of that as well, but in a rare emergency, it would take us more than 15 minutes. So now we've got an hour, now we're down to 45. So if you add that to 45 and think of the different dynamics, now we're really down to 30 minutes, depending on where your area is, anywhere from 30 to 35 minutes. So I want you to take that into consideration as you move forward. Ongoing concerns as far as a cluster, or excuse me, at the district level, throughout the school year, we face a lot of challenging problems. And right now, that hour is working for us as a district because, and it says later on in some of the slides about the supply and demand, what we do with that extra 15 minutes makes a big, big difference for the amount of resources that we have. So right now, some of our problems that would challenge us if we reduce to 45 minutes is recruitment, retention of staff, flexibility for employees to work part-time and full-time, and stability. The most complicated decision that we face is, and the most challenging problem we face is the bail schedules and trying to solve it in a fair way. So for us, recruitment right now in this area is a challenge, and to try to reduce this to 45 minutes, it's going to take a whole lot, and we'll, in the next couple slides, you'll see that, what those challenges are. Throughout the school year, we struggle with balancing all the competing objectives and difficulty to satisfy district objectives. So a lot of times, you know, decisions are made without having input from transportation. So, you know, in my past experience, a lot of times when they do drawings and things like this, you know, we would be a part of that discussion so that we could say, hey, the bus turnaround needs to be here or whatever. So having said that, we have 45 to 50 minutes to do home and school routes. But again, we face daily challenges and problems that take away from that 45 minutes that we have, and I'm gonna say that hour that we have. And now when you reduce it, back to the engineer's point, you know, backing, left-hand turns, side conversation with parents, sub drivers, the traffic flow at school, stop signs, walk paths from home to bus stops, hazardous. We deal with this from a district level, which impacts all areas throughout the district. So these are things we have to, it's not just black and white and things that we look at. 1 hour right now is working for the district. I'm gonna just say it that way. The 1 hour, you're getting a lot for that hour. And right now, we need to just try to, I'm not satisfied with where we are right now with the service level that we're providing, because right now we need to get a handle on the service that we're providing to our families. And right now, I wouldn't be comfortable reducing it to 45 minutes. Decrease in 15 minutes for each cluster school will reduce the amount of time we can to use reuse buses throughout the day and reduce turnaround. So now what we have with that hour in certain areas, Hilton Head is an example, we can go over to Hilton Head and get more bang for our money because it's closer. The same thing with Bluffton. Right now that hour allows us to do more with less, although it's not ideal with what we're doing, but I think it's something that the district or the schools can live with for the time being, okay? Right now, our special ed routes are normally, they travel greater miles. Reducing that, again, we get less for what we have if we take that down to 45 minutes. Now, our sped routes won't be able to do as much as they do today with that 1 hour. Same thing for our McKinney-Vento students. Sometimes we don't have a vehicle readily available, and now we're reducing that time even more. Now we're gonna make it even a lot harder for us to get McKinney-Vento students transportation right away. And doing this too, it may not optimize our use of our buses. So if we had more, then we would say now we would have drivers not working a total of 6 hours or, yes, sir.
You want to make sure everybody understands what a McKinney-Vento student is.
Okay, those are students that are, by definition, there's a criteria that they're homeless. And then by law, there's a law that's out there that says, hey, you have to get these students transportation like ASAP. You can't wait because it impacts their education, their sit time. So it's a challenge because you have a deadline that you have to do it. And I know the state that we came from, we would get penalized a financial penalty for not getting these students on time to where they need to go. So sometimes it's like, say it might be 3 days, so it's like a hot thing right now. And sometimes these students can go to the school that they choose to or they're at. So now it makes it even more difficult when you start taking away from that hour. Now we don't have, if you take that 15 minutes all the way down for all of our vehicles, now we're dropping it down to, say 1,000 hours. And now all of a sudden we gotta do more with less hours. And I think that's
to your point, I know, I was hearing Tori talking about every day she drives to Bluffton for a Broad River student.
Yeah.
Kenny Vento student started at Broad River. We have to allow her transportation to stay at Broad River. Goes all the way to Bluffton to take her.
Yeah,
to-
and that
to
takes-
get that student. That's tough.
And that's one bus, one driver. So now, from that hour, we reduce it to 45. I don't know what we're gonna do. You know, we're gonna have to work miracles. It reduces the employees' productivity. Again, like we said, McKinney Vento, SPED, now you reduce it, now we can't get more with less. Right now, the rapid growth in communities, I think we need to vet the bail schedules and support growth. I know since I've been here, when I go out, I'm in amazement at Bluffton, how fast it's growing. We have buses that we purchased that we basically outgrown those buses. And it's a challenge every day. And that's one of the things, you take 15 minutes away, again, that's gonna really, really challenge us in Bluffton and certain other areas. Right now, we don't have a staggered bail times in the following 3 areas: Beaufort, Bluffton, St. Helena. We don't have it in those areas, but that hour allows us to provide the service that we are able to provide today. And is it the greatest? No, but it ain't the worst. But considering everything, I think we do a good job with that 1 hour. Okay?
What are the staggered bell times you're talking about?
Just like we would have 2:45, 3 o'clock, 3:15. So everything, it depends on the size of your school district. So, for example, I think the comment was made, we would let the schools dictate it. Now, when you don't have us at the table, it's like, okay, now you're asking me to do something. I'm sitting there like, oh man, I don't know how we gonna do this. And it's just a challenge. And right now, our profile as a district doesn't allow us, when you look at, say, cities that are heavily populated, that have a big tax base, people are looking for jobs, you can quit this job and go here. That's our biggest challenge. Since I've been here, I mean, we don't get a lot of people knocking our doors down and say, hey, I wanna come.
Yeah, I just wanted to know what the staggered times were.
Yeah,
We're still in the information gathering stage, so I don't think it's a question of deciding, mentioning it. Nobody's gonna dictate anything to anybody,
mhm,
okay? We're gonna get the information together, you're giving us information, the clusters are gonna give us information. And then we get it all together and we see, can we make what the clusters would like work? What would it take for it to work? Okay, so it's not like we're gonna call you in and say, here's what the clusters want, go make it happen.
mhm.
Okay, that's not, that type of dictating will not happen.
Okay,
I
good.
don't think.
Okay,
I don't think anybody has said anything that would allude to that, really.
okay, thank you.
I thought the questions we were asking the clusters are, do you want the elementary schools on the early schedule, or do you want the high schools on the early schedule? So, that's the question we're asking. We're not asking if they want a 45-minute turnaround. But that's why we asked you, could you do the turnaround better, so that when we ask
Yeah,
the
and-
question, we could say, we've reduced the turnaround time, so now the early one starts 15 minutes later.
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying,
That's the question. The clusters aren't gonna, as
Yeah.
you said, they're not gonna dictate.
okay. Let me just move on. District-wide, again, like I talked about, the McKinney Vento, it puts a strain on our SPED routes as well. There's just some numbers I gathered. I went through each cluster to find out what we would need to make it work. And here are some of our numbers that came back. That salary is the average for a driver. We would have to have 7 bus, in this case, 10 to 12 drivers at that annual salary. 3 of those routes would be sped routes, so we would need 3 monitors and at that salary. And then we would have to purchase as a district an additional 10 to 12 buses. Meek Point, same thing. You can see that, and then as you can see at the bottom of that, the only difference is that we have 8 routes that travel 200 miles a day right now as we stand today. St. Helena, same thing. You see what that is, 7 drivers. 4 of those routes will be sped. 4 monitors, 7 buses, and right as we stand today, we have 2 spare routes crossing attendance zones. In Hilton Head, they would only need 1 sped route, 1 monitor, 1 bus, and then they have 2 routes crossing over attendance zones.
So this to me is useful information, because now we know that Bluffton, to gain 15 minutes would cost $1,241,720.
Plus or minus a
Yeah,
little bit.
so now it becomes, is that 15 minutes worth that? Okay, so we'll get the information from the clusters, and then we can sit down and talk about it. Or we can sit down and talk about what would it take to get to what the clusters are recommending, you know.
Okay.
My understanding is we're not asking the clusters if they want a 45-minute turnaround.
I understand that, but I think the reality is.
Just
that
keep saying that.
They'll
That's
come
why I
in with
keep-
all kinds of ideas.
Well, we're not asking, we're only asking them, do you want the elementary kids to start early, or do you want the high school to start early? And that's the decision we're giving them.
And you know, I'm sitting there just processing some of the information now. And, you know, to be quite honest, conversations I've had with several bus drivers is that right now we can't currently keep bus drivers right now at the moment because of the fact that there's so much stuff going on in the bus department. I've got several complaints, and I've redirected a lot of people to go up there to the chain of command and go to the superintendent, and you know, make sure that they just not come to me before, you know, and then just hearing it, you know, a lot of the bus drivers are out for various things, and you know, and they've told me that they've requested meetings, and that they'd asked for a group meeting, and that they were denied those things, and that so. It seems like I think what we've been presented with is half of the problem. There's some other outlining problems between staff and drivers that needs to be handled as well. That would help help the impact of the study. And so I'm not real comfortable with relying on some of this information when I know that there's some other things that are going on. So I just want to go ahead and put that out there. You know that I hear some of this information, but I don't fully receive it, because I know that there's some major other things that are going on, and that's the reason why we're not getting drivers to come in, because the drivers say, well, people talk, you know, the notion is that we're not appreciating our drivers right now. So that, and then there's some other internal house issues going on, so I'm just not comfortable with this whole presentation. That's what I put that out there.
Okay. We have issues with the drivers, that's probably another conversation that we should have with Mr. Klein.
When are you putting out that question to the clusters? Have you
As soon
already?
as we finalize it.
Okay.
But then Will's working on town hall meetings also. I'm working on a survey that will go out to teachers, parents.
Teachers, parents, and
And it's
administration.
basically a very simple question. Do you want the elementary school to start early in your cluster, or do you want them to stay the way the high school, or do you want the high schools
Yeah, okay.
to start early? That's it.
Are you hoping, I mean, that would be before second semester, you're asking, I
Oh,
mean,
yeah,
in the next
yeah,
few weeks?
Yep. Right.
No. I think I asked Robert earlier, almost a year now, I guess. Have we looked at downsizing some of those buses to handle things like the Vento process? I mean, taking a whole bus to pick up one kid and bringing him back, that's just not cost effective. I don't know what the specs are that you have to have a school bus, a 55 passenger to do that. And I wonder, do you look at those kind of things? I mean, if you're gonna buy buses, particularly for speds and other things, can it be a smaller bus?
So
First
to
of all.
answer that question, I know Eldridge and I both talked about this. To answer that question, yes. We actually need to diversify our fleet a little more. All our buses come off lease, is it this year?
I think you said this year.
Yeah, so we will have finished our lease to own by the end of this year. And what we need to do is actually get some larger buses and get some, not have them all the same year, and get some smaller, maybe van size. And so both of those, I'd say on either end, we need some smaller to run the quick trips like you're talking about. And part of our problem is Bluffton is that we need larger buses, so we can carry more at one time. Fair enough, or?
Yeah, that's fair enough. Because like, you know, I'm just thinking about my experiences. We had vans for our McKinney-Vento. We didn't have school buses. But when you go to each state, everything's a little bit different. Yeah, go ahead.
And how many buses do we lease?
140? No, wait, 140 are
State buses.
State buses. And so our lease bus is about 40?
40.
Okay, so we have discretion on 40.
And also, you'll see in your 8%, we'll be looking at putting in a program to replace our athletic buses, because we have a lot of those that were purchased at one time about 12 years ago, and they're all...
Different issues.
Yeah.
Different issues.
But in doing that, we can get some smaller buses there as well. I mean, to diversify our fleet a little bit.
I would be very impressed if we were trying to optimize and balance our load. I know there are kids with IEPs that they need their own bus, and it doesn't make any sense to put one kid on a large bus. So we really ought to consider that a priority. Yes, sir, it does happen, yeah. So,
I would say that the only thing we have control over, though, are those 40 buses we own. The 140 that the state owns, we have no control over. They give us what they give us. And that's
But,
it.
yeah, as far as you know, right, I mean, you don't have any control of it, but there must be somebody making those decisions too.
We're still
And we
running.
might be able to appeal for some kind of differences in what they give.
Well, we did apply for the 18 propane buses, so we're supposed to get those, but we still have 1989 and 1990 buses provided by the state. And anytime they do not have air conditioning. And so that's one of our biggest things, is people concerned with air conditioning. The state says, this is what you got, make do with it.
Well, yet again, I will agree with what Mr. Campbell just said, is that, I think sometimes, staff handle things that, I think sometimes they need to bring to the body of the board, and have the board to take on some of these issues. I think the staff are taking on board issues. I'll just go ahead and say that to some degree. I'll go ahead and put that out there. So I do agree with that. And that's some of our problem as well.
The bottom line on this though is you can't, as things stand now, you can't reduce.
Correct.
Is that true statement?
Yeah, I think we need to improve the service we have today. And we've been working hard, and I think we'll head in that direction, but if we reduce the time, the level of service we're providing to our schools would not improve. And that needs to be our focus.
Yeah, okay, I just want to get to the bottom line. We
Yes,
asked
that's
you,
the bottom
we
line.
asked you to look at it, and this is.
is that a definite cause and effect relationship?
Yes. I would say, because what our problem is that we're down drivers, as Mr. Smith alluded to. So of course, if you shrink the time, we need more drivers. And we need to improve our service and our appreciation of our employees, get that good base with what we have before we try. Because really, by shrinking time, you would expand the number of buses we need, and that's what he's showing here, and the number of employees.
Well, have you given any thought, the current superintendent comes from a school district that used to take people in and say, all right, you don't have your license, we'll train you. You agree to work, you agree to drive our buses for a certain amount of time after you get your license, and we'll train you to get your license.
We have that
And
program.
he said their staffing problems went away.
We have
Yeah, we have it.
We do that.
That's a problem.
We do that, we still can't get bus
Yeah,
drivers.
we train the drivers.
I just keep hearing, I'm listening to the conversation is about 45 minutes, and David, Mr. Scrivener said a minute ago that it was about the change of start time, as in high school or middle school going first. So where we're going at with this hour time of 45 minutes to an hour, I don't know where this is coming from. The question was whether the high school or middle school go first. So where we're coming from with the 45 minutes an hour and whether that can be done, I don't know where that's coming from. That's really not the question on hand right now. And then also the second question was, I remember they said that, Mr. Odding and Mr. Black said that we could talk about doing it in clusters. So those were the two conversations around the buses that I, to the best of my knowledge, remember us talking about doing our start time maybe they did a different hour of apart for 45 minutes. I never remember, but I do remember us talking about doing it within starting an hour first or having an hour turnaround time, and doing it that way. But the 45 minutes, that's totally left for me. That's very foreign. Moving forward, that's my recollection of
The
us having
45
meetings.
minutes came because in the conversations that you all had, one part of the discussion is if you couldn't do it within the hour, you asked how close could you get, and you asked them to look at 45 minutes if you could not change it. That's where the 45 minutes came. Is if you couldn't change it within the hour, because when they last presented, they said right now they needed an hour. Mr. Aldridge was saying in his findings as he was doing an audit through the district, he was looking at saying he could cut off some time, and so you all came up with the 45 minutes and bringing it closer.
I think the real idea was that if, hypothetically, if the young kids are being brought in early, you want them to start, to be out there waiting on the bus
Right.
15 minutes later.
That's
The other
where they
kids will be starting at the same time, so there's the 45 minutes. I think that's what the concept was. If every cluster said we want our elementary kids first, then we don't want them out there at the time now, which seems to be a little earlier. That was I think the gist of the conversation. So, yeah.
Yeah, we have your answer. Thank you.
Okay.
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 Do we need to present this to the full board, or,
This was actually.
I hold off, but
yeah?
it just sparked a conversation that can't go anyplace because we haven't gotten
I
our
agree,
data.
I agree, it's a lot.
No, excuse me. Have a good one, everyone.
All right. Right.
Yeah, I just wanted to check. I want to make a decision. Check. All right, well, down to the AR, student athletics AR, that was,
We've seen this a few times. I'm
Yes, we have.
very excited about the possibility of moving beyond it. At the last board meeting, there were a couple items of concern that were brought up about not having the GPA clearly pointed out what the requirement would be for fall sports. So you'll see on page 2, in the highlighted section, this was where the area in question was. And you'll see added as the last bullet, the previous year weighted GPA should be a 2.0. So that was not on there last time, so hopefully that is clear, and you'll also find it in section B, where it talks about, for the second semester, it's based on the first semester. So that was added, as was brought up at the last board meeting, and one other item was added, the clear bag policy. There's many of the high schools now that are already interested in doing the clear bag policy, so instead of starting it in winter sports, it was going to start immediately. And those are the changes that have been made since you last saw this.
I don't think that it should be started immediately I think we should give people time to get clear bags, but I wrestle with this clear bag policy enough. I got other things to move on to, but because y'all are over that part, and basically y'all bring it to us in the form of a AR.
yeah, an AR.
Right, basically we don't have to prove AR, so exactly. So therefore, moving forward, my personal opinion is that if we say that y'all initially told us that it's gonna start in the winter, it should start in the winter and not before then, not a moment before that.
John, anything? You're all right? Okay. You made the changes that were requested. You added immediately what wasn't requested, but. Okay, so you can bring this before the board and
Well, I mean, you'll bring it as, just for your information as a representative, and I'll
Changes
include it
were
in
made.
your packet.
changes were made,
Yeah.
yeah. Sure you don't want to read this stuff?
No. It's been a learning experience for me. I will hope to do better in future ARs, to have them go a little smoother.
budget priorities, now, I put this on because we're supposed to set up our budget priorities. I'm a little confused by exactly what the final product is supposed to be. I know that one of our goals is recruitment and retention of teachers. So it would seem that we'd have some kind of priority around that, but I don't know what that would be. Unfortunately, Alice, couldn't be here today.
So maybe we need to revisit this.
That's what I'm thinking. If that's your interpretation, because I just read it, I haven't had any conversations, I don't know what the point is of budget priorities, other than looking at the goals, as you pointed out in your email. And our goal is recruitment and retention of teachers, that's our second goal. So it seems like we should say, these are the budget items that align with that goal, and
So would it, and that's one of the major reasons I came today, was to kind of see how you guys were handling this, so that when the academic committee meets next week. So, like just one suggestion, I do think that locality supplement is helpful in retaining teachers. So would that be the type of thing that you all would say, we recommend the retention of the locality supplement? I mean, I don't know.
Okay, yeah, I hear you, but I don't think that's our job.
I'm
I think
wondering,
that's
that's why-
Alice's job. And I think what the budget priority should be is we're not trying to say what items should be in the budget. We're
Okay.
trying to weight the priority of those items compared to other items that have lesser priority.
Like, for example, so I'm trying to learn from you guys.
Yeah.
So like, for example, can you give me an example?
Oh, the example would be that recruitment and retention of teachers, whatever money that takes, is probably less important than a summer institute. Okay? I realize we don't have a summer institute.
No, I see what you're
anymore,
saying.
But let's say that we did,
just this year.
okay? So the priority for the budget would be that item, and if we can do the other item, great.
Okay.
But wait, the development, W-E-I-G-H-T, the development of the budget toward the priorities that operations needs, that HR needs, that academics needs in terms of software, for instance. Okay. Does that answer the question?
Like, would you go into something, the conversation you just had about bus drivers, would that be considered a priority, like retaining or you know,
A
so.
program, yeah.
Right, so
A program, but we don't have to say how. It's like the achievement gap. We can't solve the achievement gap. We shouldn't
Right.
even try. We should get the superintendent to solve but we have to determine what the priority is for the people that have to execute.
And that's what you're doing today? You're gonna start listing your priorities?
Well, we have to deliver it on the 25th and the 26th,
Right.
so.
Well, I was gonna say, maybe we need with them as well, just so that she can,
I think we definitely need to meet with Alice
Yeah.
on this topic.
Yeah.
I have a little different view, but I haven't talked, I guess Tina came up with this, and I'm not sure what the product is she's envisioning.
Actually, it came out of the finance committee.
Can I see that?
It out of the finance committee.
Can I see that?
It came out of the finance committee, to deal with the budget priorities, and so since, then it was suggested that the committees go ahead and look at each, since the academics would be dealing with academics and the operations, so that the committees would look at what they believe to be the priorities of operations. That's where it would come from.
It's a general idea to point the finance committee in the direction where, when they bring the budget to us, we've already had some input. We've already had some input on what operations want, what academics want, and where the priorities are. It's very much like what John said. I mean, if you got priorities like busing, then that should be mentioned. I think in a general sense, not any dollar value, but in a general sense, so that when they start selecting and bring us the budget and we start vetting, we'll not over vet what our priorities are.
Yeah.
Because our priorities should be included now that you been given a general,
Right.
focus.
Okay, that's your, I see where it come from, but I would think then that each budget item would have to be linked to that priority.
Well, yeah, yes.
Each budget item would have to say,
Link to all of the
this
pri-
links to this
Oh,
priority.
yeah, all of the priorities
So the
together
board
should
would
be
know.
there, yeah.
When it's looking at the line items, this, we'll go back to something you said, when they're looking at the line items, you say, okay, this links to priority one of goal number one. Right,
So one way to put it is, if we pick 5 things in operations that the area or the topic has got to be addressed in the budget, if that's a minimum. If they can find money to address other things in the budget, so all for the better. But they better not put in a budget at the expense of a topic that we have determined should be a priority for the budget. Now think back, see, what we're really doing is having a conversation that we used to have at the end of April. They come to us with the budget completely done and say, what are your priorities?
That's why.
And so we'd go through this exercise saying, why isn't this in there? Why isn't that in it? Well, because we weren't asked until the budget was done. So now we're taking that conversation that we had at the end of April and having it very early. Maybe not early enough, but earlier than we did. And so if we just think about it in those terms and discipline ourselves not to worry about areas that do not fall within the purview of our committee, okay, and not worry too much about the details of how it gets done. We gotta think of what we want done and not how. That's why we pay.
No, and I understand that, and so that's why I wanted to see how you guys are doing that. How are you coming up with your priorities right now? Because we're doing this during the workshop.
We're discussing it in terms of what Robert and we think needs to be done for operations and how it links up to the board goals that we adopted a meeting or two ago.
Right,
So we're just discussing it right now. This is the first time we've discussed it.
okay.
So I have 2 things. One, the board approved the the budget's calendar. So at the workshop, the budget workshop is going to be at the board work session as opposed to having an additional day. So with each of the committees reporting out, as the full board, you all will do your budget priorities and determining what each one would be. So that's gonna take place at the work session instead of having a separate budget workshop. So that's where the priorities are coming from the committees. The other wanted to say, Alice had sent the operations committee, you all, email about what she thought her priority would be for inclusion.
Yeah, but it doesn't go along with this conversation
Okay,
very much.
all right.
Because I talked to Alice.
Okay,
She didn't understand it,
okay.
and neither did I. I couldn't help.
Did we make, did we already make, that work, that we already decided as a board that we were having that to be done as a workshop versus, well, I say we canceling the workshop date and having it as a,
We didn't have a workshop date because the board didn't want an additional, so that's gonna be at the work session. You're gonna discuss
right.
the board, the budget
So
workshop.
within a work session.
Yes.
Right, but I was asking, we already did the agenda for the work session already?
No, you're gonna set it October 16th,
So that's something that we're looking to put on the agenda.
correct?
Okay, can I make a suggestion? I need that goal again that we have for operations, and then we can think of the things that operations does and whether or not what operations does really links to that or not. And the ones that do really link become the priorities, and those that don't link to the goal become the maybes.
Okay, what goal do we have for operations?
Hmm?
What goal do we have for operations?
Well, you can have an improvement in the transportation fleet, you can have improvement in the level of service from operators, and what would it take to do that? I mean, no, you don't want to get in what it would take to do that, but just as an item, we want to see that addressed in the budget. Now, that would clearly be linked to the goal that we have for operations. Because we've got it by default.
Yeah, I don't know what goal we have for operations. I know that we have academic achievement and it has bullets under it. We have teacher recruitment and retention, and we have policy.
We do it.
That's where I'm having a problem. So you have to link your stuff to one of those three goals somehow.
Well, you have your strategic plan, is that, and there are very limited goals in the strategic plan when it comes to operations. There's not a whole lot there. I assume, is that kind of what you're talking about as far as goals?
I'm just trying to get us,
You're not, excuse me,
A clear picture.
aren't you a human resource also?
Yes.
oh yeah, well, human resource, we got human
Okay, you
resource.
got human resource?
And we're gonna have a meeting.
Operations, yeah, that's
an
gotta
easy
be,
one.
the
But
school bus
operations-
discussion you just had, I mean, how important is that? in
I
terms
think
of-
like the goal in the strategic plan is something like to, it's like maintain safe and adequate schools. That's it. I mean, I think that's pretty much the length of the goal in the strategic plan.
Right, and then we need to get into the conversation of how does the strategic plan goals relate to the board goals.
Yeah.
Right, I'm just trying to get a connection.
And have,
A priority for the budget may be to make sure that we fund relationships so that it's highly likely that you're gonna be handed $344 million to spend. Okay, so we have to figure out what you're gonna need from the operations budget to do that properly. Because there's things you have to do that will not be covered in that 344 million, correct? In order to achieve the spending of that 344 million.
I don't-
Certain overheads.
A lot of those overheads can be covered by the 344 million. The way it is written in the state law, your expenses to implementing that money can come from that money.
Okay, but no operating expenses can be covered by that, correct?
Yeah, no operating expenses. Now, you can use operating expenses to pay for, to help you with referendum projects, but you can't use referendum money to pay for
That's what I
operations.
was saying. If you're gonna need operating expenses to help people spend that money, that has to be a priority for your budget.
But I'm saying that referendum funding can pay for those expenses you're referring to. So I should not need additional operating expenses.
But when I'm thinking, if I'm in operations, I'll be thinking things relative to actually getting the transportation of children to the school, monitors. What do you need to make that the operation safe? Other than referendum money for the infrastructural things, what about the human things that you would need for the operations to be nice and smooth? That's in my mind, that would be what you would prioritize when you're asking the yearly budget to do something. That's my mind. You need additional bus drivers, that's operation.
Right.
I mean,
and also, my mindset thing is also, I've also heard that there's a lot of things on those buses that are broken. So before we even go out and purchase any of these new buses, the buses that can save, that are good, that's worth salvageable, that we fix those things and those things that are fixed operational first before going out and spending money on new buses. Or and those are also things that are getting. Those are also big things in getting kids to school safe, because what those buses catch on fire. And what if you have things that are not working, or doors that are not opening, emergency exits, things of that nature that I'm hearing out there? Those are things that are very serious. So those are some of the things that we need to align on, looking forward to be working. That's just my system. Those are goals that I'm talking about. Realistics.
I mean, just recognize though, when it comes to buses, the state controls the majority of our buses.
But when it comes to our students, there's no price to fix those buses. Even the state-owned, a lot of kids are riding on.
We're drifting away.
Well, I'm just gonna say that to lose your point that the board may need to get involved in that, because that's a state level decision, not.
That's not. You'll follow that, Robert. I know what you're talking about.
can I make a suggestion for two areas, okay? A priority be to improve transportation, and two subsets to that: improve personnel performance and improve mechanical assets, buses, okay? All right, so you got a priority and you got two subsets to go. So if the board agrees with that priority, that's something that you can expect to see in the budget, and that we'd expect finance to deliver in the budget. Okay? The other area might be, when you talked about safe and effective schools. Well, a subset to safe schools is to implement the plan that the security director will give us Sunday. Et cetera, et cetera. That's all.
All right, we're out of time, but we still have agendas. And we need to have another meeting for HR.
I just
So
want
let's take care of that.
Can we devote a little bit of the subsequent meeting for HR to finish up on what?
Well, I think the HR meeting is focused on the goals. That's my
Yeah.
thinking.
Okay,
But we have to
yeah, okay.
get that.
Yeah.
And maybe the second part of that meeting could be to talk to Robert about, with this new understanding, what are your goals for next year? Give it a try. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, talk about buses, transportation. We got some buses that need to be off the road completely. So I think that is something that this board needs to start talking about. Repairing old buses is not gonna help. The more money you put into it, you're gonna spend.
I think that's the state. Or don't they own all the old ones? The only ones we have control over are new.
Yeah, well, I understand that.
Right, I agree. That's for the legislative committee.
Right.
Yeah, and
That's you.
you're right, I will address that with the delegation.
That's great. Okay, I will try to set up a mutually agreeable time to have another meeting before the work session. And the first topic will be HR, to get their goals straight, and the second part will be to talk with Robert about his goals and how they link. I'm uncomfortable with them linking to the strategic plan.
Okay.
I'm much more comfortable having them linked to the board goals. And transportation, obviously, is part of student achievement. If you can't get the students there, then they can't learn anything. They're all
Do you
like
wanna
that.
know what dates are available next week before, because the calendar is filling up pretty quickly for October. The 14th is available, if you wanna meet on the 14th of October. There's nothing, at 6 o'clock there is a referendum meeting, but, during before then, there's nothing else. The 15th is board meeting on Hilton Head Library. The 16th is agenda setting and academics. The 17th is finance.
I can do the 14th.
14th.
Even though it's
I can do it.
Indigenous Peoples' Day.
Hmm?
It is Indigenous Peoples' Day,
Yes.
but
I can still do it.
I can still do it.
Right.
Then you also have the 21st. It is available, but there is a referendum. Town hall is
All
6
right,
o'clock.
let's try the 14th because
Okay.
we might have follow-up. Are you
Okay.
good on the 14th, Will?
That's fine.
Okay.
What time?
14th is good for us three.
Okay.
Will
What time?
Alice be back?
Yeah, she's back.
Okay.
She may not have time to prepare.
Right. Now she's gone all this week.
She may not have time to prepare.
Well, if she were, if she.
But we can talk her through, much like
Yeah, we
Yeah.
don't need to do
we
that.
talked through this,
All right.
to make
So
sure
what time?
we're all on the same page. What
What
time
time?
is good for you two?
I
Is
guess-
3 o'clock good?
Yeah, 3 o'clock is fine.
3 o'clock good for you, John?
Yeah, fine.
3
Try
o'clock.
3 o'clock here. We'll go 3 to 4:30 because that still leaves us time
For
to
the
get to
town
the
hall.
referendum meeting at Beaufort High School, using the existing entrance around the tree.
Are
We
we
have
cutting,
to
Yeah.
are we cutting off our other agenda?
We're gonna have to pick that up on the 14th, okay?
Also,
So this is, you're at the courtyard, this is where tomorrow night?
I right now, the semi-annual maintenance clean, you feel you have to, if that doesn't work, you take it right there.
It's a PE due now,
Yeah, you're right.
but.
You're right. Take it right there.
No, I mean, I can bring it up, there's not, it's not time
If you want,
sensitive.
that's what it is, if you have questions, you
All right.
call me, but this
We're
is good to
adjourned.
go. That's it.
So, okay, so the